podcast where we celebrate the moves that women are making. My name is Amy Pons, founder of Unlock the Magic Coaching, Healing, and Marketing. I'm joined today with Willow Blythe-Carroll. Willow, an enrolled citizen of the Muscogee Creek Nation, is an award-winning Indigenous leader, storyteller, and keynote speaker. As the founder of Weaving Wisdom, Willow inspires leaders of Indigenous and diverse communities to reclaim the truth of who they are, lead with authenticity, and find their voice, bringing hope and resilience into their lives while supporting them in creating lasting change and a legacy that uplifts others. Her deep-rooted dedication to uplifting emerging and established leaders through programs and initiatives with local, national, and global impact earned her the distinguished recognition as a 2023 Native American 40 Under 40 by the National Center for American Indian Enterprise Development and 2022 40 Under 40 Leader of Influence by the Dallas Public Relations Society of America. She is a thought leader, passionate about authentic, heart-centered leadership, and a MMIW, Missing Murdered Indigenous Women advocate, sharing her voice and story with thousands of leaders across Fortune 500 companies, nonprofit organizations, and colleges and universities. Willow, welcome.
Mado, thank you so much for having me, Amy. I'm so glad to be here.
Hope and resilience as we meet on this beautiful full moon in Leo. And the vibe, one of the vibes for tonight is hope, which is really something I'm anchoring into for today. And I'm really excited to dig into that with you.
Yes, thank you.
Lead with authenticity, finding voice. Not surprisingly, we're on the same wavelength in relation to, I posted an article this morning about how anything you set forth to do out in the world starts within, with your own personal truth. And as hard as it is right now, and other times, but right now it feels maybe the hardest to find that truth or remember your center or remember what you stand for, remember who you are. That's actually the whole how we start to move forward.
Yes, that is so powerful. I'm so honored to have the opportunities that I do to work with leaders and especially women in leading from this place because that authenticity and that resilience is within us. And, oftentimes we can go through life and forget that that is with us. And so, it really is returning to self. It is returning back to our roots and reclaiming and reconnecting with that part that has always been with us from the start. We just have to dismantle narratives that are not ours. We have to dismantle parts of our story that are not ours and return to what we know to be true about ourselves. And so that is my heart work and really helping leaders to see that, and women especially, again, because that inner wisdom, that inner power is within all of us. It's in every single one of us.
I'm smiling because that's such a beautiful heart-led, soul-led sentiment. And today I'm wearing my sweatshirt that says, on Wednesdays, we smash the patriarchy. Because, yeah, I feel so much can be true at once. I feel from my time in corporate America, I was never allowed to show up as my quirky, fiery Aries, wonderfully tornado-y kind of self. It was always mind your manners as a fellow Aries. You know
Yeah.
that we're always going to get stuff done. And so we're always going to crush it. It being, in my case, it was the 9 to 5 job, but always behind closed doors because I was always with my team asking, how's your heart today? What's going on? How's life? I was always pulled behind closed doors and saying, like, don't do that. Show up more like X. My flame was never fanned that way until I left corporate, and I found such incredible humans, women like you, that can appreciate and fan my flame, and that helps me move in this world as authentically me. And we need now more than ever everything that is going on outside of you. Please take an intentional pause and say, does this align with my personal truth? Do I need to absorb this? Can I just observe it and then stand firm in my light?
I love that. That is so beautiful. And, there is so much freedom, and I can hear that just even in how you're speaking now in this moment. There's so much freedom when we get to this place in our lives when we are able to be our true selves and authentically our true selves. And, you spoke to it, having those narratives that are not ours can really wilt away parts of ourselves and can make us feel like a version that's not ours. And putting on that mask, oh gosh, talk about it is so much harder to be something you're not than just to be yourself. And that is why authenticity is so important. And especially in our world, like to return to self and trust ourselves enough to know that we have the power and wisdom to be the best versions of ourselves. And what I can share too, just in my own story of really learning to reclaim and reconnect with my roots, because that's been my story. And also having this sense of how to rise above adversity, that's also been a part of my story. I'll kind of share pieces or facets of similar experiences that I had as well. And so, originally I'm from Tulsa, Oklahoma. That's where I was born. My family is from Muscogee, and I have some beautiful memories of my family, all in parts of Oklahoma, and I still carry those with me. And, truthfully, my circumstances early on were really, really challenging and hard. That was, the cards that I was dealt with at the time. And what grounded me and what helped me the most in those challenges, in those experiences, in those traumas was stories. And, culturally, storytelling has been a part of my journey from the very beginning. I have these beautiful memories of my papa sitting down with me and reading these beautiful stories and singing to me and telling these creative, beautiful stories. And I was just so captivated and, so much healing in that storytelling experience and imagination and creativity and all the things that are so important to us even now as adults, that creativity, that imagination. And as I grew up, I knew I wanted to tell stories. And so I went to school to learn how to tell stories. So I kind of fell into the world of journalism, and there was a lot of empowerment in that, just being able to tell the stories that deserve to be told. And I turned that into a successful career in corporate communications and kind of all things communications. And along the way, I started sharing my personal story and my story of resilience and, especially within Indigenous communities. And I realized, oh, this is a calling. This is an ancestral calling. And so, as I grew in my career, that was always at the heart of everything that I did. And I kept wanting to go back to my roots. And so many times in my career, I can remember where I was wearing that mask, the exact mask that you talked about, or feeling this pressure to make myself smaller than, or to be something, to be a version that wasn't myself. And so I picked up those things along the way. And I always just felt that calling of share your story, but most importantly, reclaim what is yours, reclaim your story, and go back to those anchors. So that's what I did in my own kind of healing journey. And I've been able to reclaim those parts. I changed my career entirely, made some shifts. I started sharing my story even more, working with students, working with youth. First of all, I believe all of us are leaders, no matter where we sit. We are leaders at home. We are leaders in our communities. We are leaders in all those spaces. And so having the opportunity to work with leaders from all walks of life and to help them see that what they're looking for or who they need to be is all within them. They have that within themselves. And so I have the honor of sharing my own, wisdom, my own healing journey, my own kind of going back to my own roots. I get to share that guidance with others and helping others grow. And so all that to say, reclaiming my roots and the truth of who I am has been so incredibly powerful and freeing that when I look back on that version of myself, who I was, it's unrecognizable. And so we as a collective need to lean into what is within us. We need to lean into that authentic space and reclaim what is ours because it is so powerful and freeing and it can transform our lives. And I've certainly seen it in my own.
And it's sometimes through my daily work with my coaching and healing, it can be so much more difficult than we realize to reclaim our authenticity because oftentimes ugh, we're going way back. We would be going back to probably childhood the last time that we kind of unabashedly danced like no one was watching. I don't know. It's like almost like an element of embarrassment comes in at a certain point, and you're like, oh, okay, I can't do that. So I have this vision that keeps coming in, an intention that I'm setting that I'll be hosting retreats around the world for women to come together and get yoni steams and get awkward and weird and be just whatever under the moonlight and just being so free. And
Mm,
something about that calls in something around, women dancing around a fire, kind of very ritual or ceremony, which is some of those ceremonies track back to Native American indigenous roots. And so I want to honor always what I do find or what I bring into practice, that it wasn't mine to begin with. And that's a tough one too, because to your point about going back to roots, my roots are somewhere in Europe. So when you say going back to your roots, is there a feeling that you have when you step foot on your land?
well, two things. I want to go back to something you said around space and ceremony. I want to start there for a moment because that is an important part of reclaiming. That is an important part of reconnecting is when we can have ceremony. And ceremony is very personal. It looks different for all of us. It's very unique to our traditions and our culture and what is medicine to our soul. And so I have found that ceremony has been a huge part of just my own personal healing journey to really have that space to look within. And you spoke to it. It can be really, really challenging to look at yourself in that way. It can be really, really challenging to like confront in a lot of ways the narratives or to confront parts of yourself that, oh, wow, I haven't thought about that in so many years. Or, you spoke to childhood, like that inner child can be really, really hard to work with. And yet, it is such a beautiful healing journey to be able to lean into those parts of ourselves that we've always had, but have just been lost along the way. So I wanted to start there with ceremony. That has just been a huge part of my own work and, something that I certainly encourage others as well as they see fit to have that self ceremony with yourself and to truly, be open to that journey and also be patient. I think often just being surrounded in urgency culture can be really challenging when we're doing ceremony and going through this healing process because sometimes we want to go quickly. We want to move quickly, right? And we want to get through all of it. But going to that part of ourselves requires patience and it requires a grace and a pause and reflection that can feel overwhelming in our culture and our society. And so I just encourage anyone who really may be looking at themselves differently in whatever season of life they're in to reconnect, to look within, and to really take that time to pause and reflect and see the trajectory that you're on. And know that you have the choice and you have everything within you to change that in whatever way that you see possible.
It's already there. And
Hmm.
and I found personally why it was so hard is because even me, you specifically, give me space to be my authentic self without apology. I still, around certain people, places, and things, will feel my authenticity start to get meek or cower. I'm like, ooh. So the difference being now from when I started my healing journey or my awakening on a soul level about 3 years ago, back then, I would just flip immediately back to, I don't know, pre-awakening. Now it's like I get a discernment. I'm like, ooh, what is that? What, what's happening? What is around me right now that is asking me to be lesser? So what I
Yeah.
think is beautiful is that you came in immediately. You're like, you love my authenticity. It's because my nervous system feels that I can trust with you to flex into that. And that's where it gets tricky for anyone, especially if the bulk of their day to day is asking them to mask up.
Hmm.
That's where it gets really hard because suddenly you start to realize you've got to unravel and unlearn your entire life. That seems like a lot.
Hmm.
So that's where it's just getting bite-sized. The kind of okay news, I guess, about this space and time is that you have daily triggers. You have daily stuff, daily influence, daily external stuff that might not feel good. That will always be your invitation to say, how do I want to respond to this as uniquely me and not be worried about how anyone else is going to respond
Mm.
to my ooh, in my throat chakra felt that. Because again, when everything and everyone around you is asking you to mask up, it's hard for you to own the fact that anyone's response to your authenticity is their work, not yours.
Hmm.
But that's a hard thing to come to grips with because then you're like, I'm not gonna have any friends. Maybe. And maybe that's not your squad. I don't know.
And you touched on something so important in that, and that's safety, being able to be authentic in a safe place. That is everything. And anyone that I work with, that is what I feel a huge part of my calling is creating that safe space within others. And so thank you for saying that you feel that way in space with me. That really does mean a lot, and that makes my heart full because that is what we deserve as women, as leaders, is to have that space, a safe space to share and to look within. Because when we have those things, we have to approach them very delicately. We have to be curious about them. And for us to be open to change or to be open to curiosities like that, that safety has to be in place first. And that's everything. And so it is so huge. And it can be really hard when life is life. There's so much happening in our world. There's so much that we're doing. You know, many of us wear so many hats in the work that we do. And we can lose ourselves very easily sometimes. It feels that way, at least. Of course, what we need is always with us, but we can feel that way and we can get lost in that noise. We can get lost in the distractions. We can forget sometimes. And so I really just love what you said around safety. It's having that safe space to explore, to be authentic, and to do that in the presence of others who want to hold that space for you and to let you be that way. Because yes, it is hard. And I've been in those situations in environments, toxic environments that have not allowed me to speak my truth. And I think you touched on it even earlier where you said, you felt almost like your light was dimmed. And I've been there as well. And that is such a hard thing to realize, oh, I can't share my full self here. Oh, I can't speak up really loud here. Oh, I can't disagree here. And there's the mask, right? And it's so incredibly challenging to live life that way. I have been in those spaces before that have not felt safe emotionally. And it was so taxing on me. And gosh, I remember when I finally confronted this version of myself that had just, my light had been so dimmed after what felt like forever. Because when you're operating from that place, it feels like a lifetime to work to get up every single day because you are not living authentically. And so in my story, what was really beautiful in that kind of ancestral calling, I remember that I was in ceremony. I was in a talking circle with a number of Indigenous relatives. And, a talking circle is an opportunity for you to be in space with others who hold that safety. And it's a vulnerable space. It's a space where you can share what's on your heart and mind. It's very free flow. It's intentionally a circle. So everyone kind of goes around and it looks different for everyone, of course. But this experience that I had was so beautiful. There's music, there was singing, and individuals were coming up and just sharing what was on their heart. And I remember this particular moment. I was sitting kind of way in the back from everyone, and I was watching and I was observing, and just so much healing and beauty I was observing. And I felt this like stirring within me to share. And mind you, this was a point in my life where the mask was on. This is the point in my life when that version of myself felt like what was not authentic within me was there. And so when I was feeling that stirring within me to share what's on your mind, I was like, no, like I could hear myself fighting with myself. Like, no, I don't want to get up there. I have nothing to say, nothing to share. And I kept hearing this voice tell me to stand up and to share what's on your mind, use your voice. And it was so uncomfortable. And I was like, all right. And it took everything in me to stand and share my truth. And what came out of that moment, first of all, immediate tears. I just lost myself. And I believe those were my exact words in that moment. I have lost myself and I need to go back to who I am. And I miss that version that's within me. And I just shared what was on my heart and mind. And it was such a beautiful moment because I had so many relatives just like, hold that space and just show me so much love and prayer. And that really was, I feel, an ancestral calling. It was, okay, this is it. This is the time now where we need to reclaim what was lost. And it has been a healing journey. It's ongoing. It never ends. I think that's something that when we're choosing to be on this healing journey, we have to recognize that it's lifelong. What I love about the person I am now is I speak my truth and I operate from a place of how does that make me feel? And what do I feel in this environment, in this space versus, and you touched on it earlier, Amy, like versus the external. I think like breaking that habit of that people pleasing, imposter syndrome, like all of those things that come with thinking externally of, well, how is this going to make others feel? And what do I need to do to fit in with that? And so I'm just grateful to be on that journey, to continue to be on that journey and to help others realize just how freeing that is to just speak from your truth, to be able to be yourself, to be able to say, these are my thoughts. And what is so beautiful about that is when you start showing that within yourself, you start growing this light. And naturally, those who are within that are also emitting that light are suddenly show up in space with you and suddenly cross paths with you. And you're like, oh my gosh, like you, Amy, you and I meeting, like just that beautiful crossing paths of the people I meant to attract in this season of my life and my most authentic self are going to naturally come my way. It just happens. And so again, just so grateful to be able to support that work and helping, women and leaders to see that within themselves and to feel that and embody that.
We're lighthouses.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Yes.
Finding each other amidst the tough stuff, the murky, the storm, the anything you want to call it. And anyone listening, especially this beautiful sharing that Willow has shared based on an ancestral deep calling within her. We all have something within us that is the reason why we're here in this space and time. And not everything around you is going to allow you to stand in your light. So when you start to get the call and it seems unbearable for you not to answer the call, there's infinite possibilities of how that can play out. And the first step is to shine your light every single day in any degree more than the day before. And either you brought up toxic work environments or, the places where your light is not able to be flexed by any degree every single day, that is also an invitation for you to say, okay, I can keep doing this, and it will likely come at the cost of your holistic well-being and purpose and why you're here, and it might transpire into something more physical at some point if you don't work with that energy within you. But the best case is that you shine your light more and more every day to where you're able to completely change the environment around you, to be able to have others shine their light. And suddenly you're in a sea of lighthouses, you know? So it's like that's the best case, but it's finding that community that, I don't know, I want your thoughts on this because it's not that anyone has to give you permission. But when I say permission, I talk about what you're sharing, which is like that the permission is the souls or the community around you that just has no agenda for you or places anything upon you. It's just open to receive you. That's what I mean by permission. Rather than like, I don't know if sometimes we'll get into networking events and it's like, okay, we got to stick to an agenda. That's not necessarily the place where I'm talking about, at least. So,
What I'll say about that, I feel like in my own journey, it's been permission that I've had to allow myself and to manifest in the ways that you described. It's been a healing journey to call on that part of me, to allow that part of me to be authentic and to give myself permission to be curious about certain things, to be curious about certain painful experiences or trauma that has come up and to understand those parts better. Like I have had to truly and spiritually and somatically and in all ways give myself permission. And that has been a healing journey. It really has. It's something that we continue to work on when we have that awareness, when we're intentional about what it is that we're looking for. And then it's almost like when we're intentional, when we want to get to know those versions of ourselves, when we want to allow that truth to shine through, things start unfolding naturally. And it's really beautiful how it happens. And some things, I call it synchronicity in a lot of ways. Some things will just happen and you're like, I can't articulate this to anyone, but I just know in my soul and spirit that this is what I'm meant to be doing. And we get these glimmers, we get these messages spiritually. It's something that we have to learn to attune to that help us continue to get to that place, that help give us the confirmation that we're on the right path. And it's something that we have to choose to do. I think, it's a choice to do that. It can be really, really hard work. We have to acknowledge that. And you spoke to it earlier too around spaces that we're in. We have to be mindful of the spaces that we are in and the people that we are surrounded by because those people and those environments influence us and can impact that part of our journey. And so we have to be really mindful of what we are allowing into our lives. And if we want to continue to be these lighthouses, to emit this beautiful light, to be the best versions of ourselves, sometimes that means making changes, and that can be really, really hard. I can't tell you the number of changes I've had to make personally and professionally to continue down the path that I am now. And in retrospect, when I look back, I'm like, oh yeah, like that was, yes, at the time it was hard, but yes, this is what needed to happen. This is who I'm meant to be. And gosh, it just gets so, again, all I can think of, the word that's coming up is just freedom. It is so freeing to just live life that way, live life authentically yourself, to emit that light, to inspire others. And that's the other part. Not only is it something, work that you're doing within yourself on behalf of your ancestors, it is work that is also inspiring others. It's inspiring youth. It's inspiring others who are on this journey in their own unique way. So when you are able to operate from that place, when you are able to show that light, you help others believe in themselves that they can have that light too, because they have it. Again, it's just opening our hearts and our minds to that intention and being willing, choosing to go down that path and that journey and self-healing.
as you reflect on reclaiming your roots, do you have insight around reclaiming roots specifically in a world where a lot of people are not where their roots actually are?
I feel like community is a huge part of reclaiming our roots. when we have the space to do that work in community and to know that others are going through what we're going through, others are being seen, and we're hearing each other's stories again. Stories are so powerful, and that in itself, being able to speak our truth and our stories and what we've gone through in a community is so healing. And I have found that for me in my own journey, being able to travel to different parts of the world and to be in community with relatives and friends from really all over, there's something healing about that. And I certainly am so attuned in nature, and culturally, nature is a huge part of our lives as Indigenous people and have been historically for years and years and years. And so there is so much healing in nature. And, being able to connect in community, to connect in nature, to feel the ground, to really truly understand the way that nature heals and loves and protects us is so incredibly transformational and powerful. And so I encourage anyone to really lean into what feels good to you, but definitely finding your community, finding your space to be you. And if that means, going to certain places that bring you joy and love and can help you really step into your power, I completely encourage that. And I've seen that in my own, again, my own story. And whenever, for me, because I'm from Oklahoma, whenever I go back to Oklahoma, even just for a moment, there is definitely a shift that I feel of like, I'm home, and it's beautiful and it's very transformative because it reminds me of my family and it reminds me of my roots. It reminds me of so much beauty that just is different from where I live now. And my grandfather, my papa, has been a huge influence in my life spiritually. And whenever I go back to visit Oklahoma, I feel him and I feel the power of my ancestors. And it is just such a beautiful feeling. It's even hard to put it in words.
Something that I feel really resonant upon that. For me, it was specifically Salem, Massachusetts. I've
Mhm.
participated in various past life regressions, and within my past lives or blood lineage, it's any natural practitioners or witches. And so when I stepped foot in that area where there was a lot of trauma around people being tried that were witches, weren't witches, and really what we're talking about is a whole nother episode, but like reestablishing your connection to nature and Mother Earth,
Mhm.
that's me as a witch, so it's like it's something that's really beautiful for me, and then that brings something else too. So the energy is always alive, of course it is, and taps back in the moment we step down. So Willow, what moves are you excited to be making, especially as it relates to weaving wisdom, what you've beautifully created into this world, and is weaving wisdom a springboard from reclaiming your roots?
Mhm. Yeah, thank you so much for asking that. Right now I am really grateful and so excited to be growing the work that I've been doing for a number of years, but just continuing to grow that and continuing to, work with leaders from all over organizations to work with students and to work with youth and to really continue to grow that work of helping leaders from all walks of life step into who they are and showing them how to do that. And that is something that I'm so excited about it. I've got so much that I've been working on and wanting to just continue to grow that work and continue to partner with, amazing individuals like yourself, partnering with organizations and communities to grow that work and to give that gift of medicine and that hope and that healing that our communities need. And it's really all about resilience. It's about that authenticity and just helping others in their life journey to do that. And so just again, grateful and honored to have that calling and to do that on behalf of my ancestors.
Over the past decade or so, things have shifted in day-to-day life where at work, we may have been told, bring your authentic selves to work. We want to see your authenticity, but there's almost an asterisk or a but and. Don't bring too much because then that could get into like unprofessional. And then now even further, current day, authenticity, inclusivity, belonging, equity, diversity is all kind of being thrown up in the air. What would you say to someone to be like, okay, now how do I do it?
So I would say, well, one, from the perspective of many of us as a collective are feeling and taking in what is going on around us. And I feel that there's a shift that is happening where we're seeing things for what they are in a lot of ways. And I would just encourage anyone who's feeling down or who is, overwhelmed is the word that comes to mind, overwhelmed by what is going on, to know that they're not alone, that there are communities that are continuing to help support authenticity, help support work of meaningful work, passion work, heart-centered work of what we're talking about today, and to not give up hope and to continue to put out their light, to continue to do their work because it matters. And there's so much power in community. There's so much power in when we work together to do things and to put our light out there and to put our truths out there. And so I just encourage anyone listening to step into that, continue to step into that, of course, intentionally, mindfully, and doing it in a space of community. Community is everything. And so when I heard you ask that question, that's what came to mind immediately.
How can we find you and support your work?
Yes, thank you so much. You can look me up on my website. So you can find me at www.willowblythe.com. I'm also on Instagram and LinkedIn and YouTube as well. So certainly connect with me, reach out to me. I'd love to hear any thoughts or ideas that you have, and looking forward to connecting with some of you.
Closing remarks as we wrap up.
I just want to say thank you, Amy, for creating the space to share my truth and to share my story. And, in my language, Mado, thank you so very much. I appreciate it. And I love the space that we created today.
Thank you, Willow.